Shall I start? Yeah. So, this MSP, uh, in short form, Management Science and Productivity. This is a very interesting subject, and in fact, whether you don't know, whether we don't know, whether you will apply all the knowledge that you have gained here in various subjects, right? And kinematics of machinery or heat transfer, all these things. But you will definitely, this subject will be with you for almost throughout your professional career. Why? Because as you grow up in life, in career, mostly you will be doing only managerial related activities, like coordinating the activities of your juniors, working out the plans for your company or your section. So you have to motivate people. You have to then take cognizant of production schedules, then quality, then managing small projects or big projects. So in that way, this particular subject will be useful throughout your life, professional career. So here, what we are doing in this subject is we are just laying the foundation for it, upon which you will have to build up further. So, for example, this MSP is a prerequisite for, say, if you want to take an elective in PPC, an elective like production planning and control. This is a prerequisite for if you want to take an elective like supply chain management or project management. So whatever, or total quality management. So there are so many electives that we will be offering from next semester onwards. So this MSP is going to be the foundation for subsequent electives, which will be, see, in every semester we will be offering one management related, industrial management related subject. Like uh, next semester, we may be offering production planning and control. Then in fourth first, you may be getting a elective like TQM. And in final semester, you may be getting. Oh, thank you. So in the final semester, you may be offered project management and supply chain management. So this is the kind of lineup we are giving this. So probably like whoever is planning to go into management related, like who want to do MBA at a later time in our career, this subject will definitely help you out, right? So this is so that's why you take this subject as it's a crucial subject. Even those who are opting for technical career, still this subject can be a useful option because uh, as I said now, like as you grow up in career, you will be using only all the principles that we are going to teach you as part of this particular subject. But learning this subject means it doesn't make you completely a complete manager, because there are a lot of things in life which you learn through experience. Not all things that um, um, you have you have to you want. Sometimes certain things you may not get it from books. See, unless you have to experience it. You know, like I use this example quite frequently. That see, there till now no one has written on any book on how to balance a cycle. If you search in internet, you will not get any book on how to balance a cycle. What you do if you want to you want to learn by cycling, you take a cycle and then have few adventures on it, and then finally, automatically, after some time, your body seems to be understanding how to balance a cycle. So, like this, there are a lot of things in life which textbooks may not able to give you any inputs. So one has to experience it. So that's why most of the companies they look for experienced candidates apart from the degrees. In fact, like one of the recommendations top business schools recommend all of you is before you join MBA, have a field experience of 2 years. Then you join MBA. It's not that immediately after BTech you join a MTech program, MBA program. So there should be like you should have gained some practical experience. Then only you will enjoy this MBA. So a bit of a bit of experience will definitely help you before you join an MBA, because unless you have some kind of practical exposure of managing things, then only you will enjoy MBA. All right. So need not be somebody said Raghuvamshi. It need not be corporate experience. Say like it can be at the bottom level also, like being in charge of a few workers whom you have to direct them, motivate them, and oh, it is not getting recorded. Huh? Just 1 minute. See, I'm totally new to this. Yeah, sorry. Yes, yes. Initially, as you say, technical doesn't mind. Even technical uh, experience is also good, right? So you definitely you join a what do you call let that be job anything. Even if you have joined in a technical job like supervising the production unit or a particular component. You might have joined Tata Motors or something but still that experience still is precious before you join an MBA. So unless there may be some exceptions, like for example, those who want to go into finance, probably you may directly go to MBA. But again, uh, but getting into finance directly also sometimes needs initial experience with the finance department, because you will know like the nuances of cost accounting, balance sheet, all those things should be okay. What do you call? Um, they should be. One should have an exposure of what is happening in practice. So this, so this, an exposure to uh, an exposure to this actual experience is good. So there are a lot of things in life where only a real life experience only helps us, not through books. So in MSP, in this subject, what we are giving is the what you call science part of the management. See, we say like unlike pure physics, pure subjects like maths, physics, and chemistry, pure sciences, applied sciences are always it is a combination of both science and art. Like if you take, let us say, uh, law or medicine, even management, law, just because you have taken a degree in law doesn't make you a great lawyer, right? You see, only few lawyers become great people like Ram Jethmalani or Nani Palkiwala, Soli Sarabji, kind of. All right. So, mm, why? Because they have, apart from having a science, they have learned these science part of law, they have some inborn qualities, that is art, which made them through, they have honed their experience, they have judiciously used their experience to gain an upper hand over the others. So just because you have studied MSP, it doesn't make you a great manager. But what we are doing here is we are telling the science part of the management, right? Not so. Whereas art part of the management, you get it through experience by learning from others, right? Just like I said, you know, like if you want to learn certain things, you can only get it by through affective domain. Affective domain means so affective domain means like uh, where you experience it, right? So management, there is a what I call management is both a what people say it is both art and science. In fact, one good definition of management is it's it is the art and science of decision making and leadership. So one definition of management is it is the art and science of decision making and leadership. So what you do in management is like two things you have to take. Two things you do. One is taking the right kind of decisions at the right time. And it also constitutes leadership skills, like motivating people under you and directing them towards a goal which seems to be their goal also, not your goal. It is a kind of combined approach to solve a problem, or it is a combined approach to take you to a new level of well-being. Like for example, you take Elon Musk. No, like he is directing his people towards a vision where he says like ultimately let us settle in Mars because Earth is becoming because of rapid changes in climatic changes. Maybe we have to see some alternative way to survive. If Earth becomes inhospitable, we should at least have some kind of backup to stay in so that the humanity doesn't become extinct. So here, like he has that vision, he is leading people, all right? No, see, he's not a simply a technical guy. He's also like the proof is in pudding. Raghumshi, or what is that? What is your name? See, if he was not a people person, I don't think he would have become such a he has mobilized a lot of resources. He has started a gigafactory in Nevada desert where not even a simple plant will survive. In that kind of desert conditions, he started a new plant. Totally, see, that is all vision. And you see, don't believe these paper reports saying that he is not a people's man kind of stuff. If he's not a people's man, then you would have already got lost, right? See, as a manager or a leader, sometimes you may have to take harsh decisions which may not be palatable to certain kind of people. Yes, Elon Musk is a futurist. Yes. So, yes, yes. No. It is not like see. Karthik is saying it is because of his marketing gimmicks. No. See, people, you can fool people for some time, but not all the way. So he has shown his capability through his like that his Model S and Model 3. All these are successful products, right? So so here, what I meant to say is like he knows how to drive people to get things done. Sometimes maybe it may not be palatable to all the people he's directing. See, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, he's also kind of Elon Musk. He's not a people's in the so-called true form of people's man. Like you can't reach greater heights at the same time satisfying everybody. You know, so there is a kind of so somebody should drive us. See, people will not voluntarily participate in things. You have to sometimes use um, like use various kind of permutations and combinations of motivational theories. Anyway, we will discuss those motivation theories in the coming classes. So, what I mean to say is, so managing any enterprise is both a science and an art. And the art portion, yeah, you see, marketing actually there are a lot of viewpoints on marketing. There is a famous management guru by name Peter F. Drucker. He said, if a product is really good, it should make marketing function a surplus. It should, if you have designed a very great product, where people will automatically buy and there is no need for marketing. But at the same time, again, that may not be true in all the cases. Sometimes you may have to educate people about your product. You may have to enlist the partners. Then you have to come out with a strategy to market your product. So, as you say, like it is a kind of communicating the product information to the consumers, but at the same time, we take some lot of feedback from the consumer also. And it is a loop because, yeah. So it is an iterative process. See, marketing is an iterative process where, say, for example, you take one of my greatest favorites, Henry Ford. You take Henry Ford life. He is famous for his moving assembly lines, mass production systems, inventing mass production systems. So Henry Ford, he has come up with what is so called T model black in color. That is the product. You may be wondering why T model? Because finally he freezed the design of his car at the Tth iteration. He initially came with A model, B model, C model, D model. It went up to T. So you release the A product into the market, get some feedback. People complain about like this feature is good, this feature is bad. You come back again, you modify the design. They say like the starter, there is a starter problem or flywheel problem, then spark plug issues, then suspension. They complain a lot, because unless the product goes into the public, sometimes you may not even predict that what kind of problem the product is likely to face in the market. So ultimately, Henry Ford has freezed his design at the Tth edition. So, in fact, like now modern definition of marketing is like you have to design a product first of all by getting a lot of product user needs, latent and actual explicit needs of the customer, and then based on that you design the product. That is the now truest definition of marketing. So it is not that you make a product and then try to push it down to the public. They say like you identify the need for a product by surveying in the market and you come with a product which is acceptable to him. But there is nothing like a fixed rule with which you can start your business. So sometimes there are, that's why management is more of an art than science. Because multiple scenarios are possible. There is nothing like only one way of doing things. But at the same time, we should be knowing what are the different ways of tackling a problem. How people have tackled the same problem in different ways. And what are the issues that they have come across to to implement a particular strategy. All right. So here, as I said, like the truest definition, at least the definition which is useful for our MSc subject, the way we have designed our syllabus, the true definition that we find it applicable to our situation, our syllabus it is like management is the art and science of decision making and leadership. So here in decision making, there is both science and art. Even in leadership also, there is both science and art. Right? You can learn certain leadership skills by going through the books, reading certain leadership books. Like you read the life of J.R.D. Tata, the great man of Indian business. J.R.D. Tata's The Last Blue Mountain of J.R.D. Tata is really good, written by R.M. Lala. Every one of you should read that book. Similarly, Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid by uh, C.K. Prahlad. Like you can read biographies of such business leaders. You can get some like so that you don't reinvent the wheel, right? So similarly, like decision making is not a very simple affair. You may be doing a lot of forecasting. You may be using like good scientific techniques like forecasting, but still you can go wrong. So what is needed is you should have what is that so-called sixth sense or some way to identify the trends. Yes, it depends on the person's intuition, right? See, even big corporations have failed to see the changes. Sometimes your own success is your biggest enemy. It happened with even a Henry Ford. See, finally, his success ultimately became his biggest enemy. Like, for example, you take yes, that is Henry Ford. If you take Henry Ford, he thought like mass production is the answer for everything. Mass production system. So what he did is he initially produced the T model. He became one of the greatest entrepreneur of business, Henry Ford. He started his company in 1907, and he reduced his price of the car from $960 to $360, $280 for a period of time, or a period of 10 years. That means he kept on reducing the price of the car. But what happened is, beyond a certain point, the markets have changed. People are looking for variety. But whereas Henry Ford was still thinking in terms of that car is a commodity. It is not he was still thinking car is a commodity. So everyone likes the same. Yes, he didn't took any innovation. But the man, his rival, Henry Ford's rival was Alfred Sloan, who is one of the founders of General Motors. He came with an alternative marketing strategy where you give a product as per the status of the customer. Like, for example, like he is the man who divided the automobile market as into various segments: low segment, high-end segment. So, like, in fact, whatever the trend Alfred Sloan has started in 1920s, is still in the same way the automobile market is still functioning. Alfred Sloan, who is the founder of General Motors, in no time, in his own lifetime, Henry Ford's lifetime, Henry Ford ended up as a second-class citizen because of the new strategy started by General Motors, where it started projecting the car as a status symbol, not as a commodity. So you have Rolls Royce at the one end, and you have a common man's car in the form of Volkswagen, right? So in that way, like Henry Ford refused to see the markets. That markets have changed, so accordingly he has to change his product strategy. And ultimately he became a second-class citizen in terms of, even though he's a pioneer with his moving assembly line, but finally, because success has entered into his head so firmly, he refused to see that markets have changed after 20 years. And like this, there are a lot of examples like Nokia is one, Kodak is one, where their success have led to their biggest failure. Kodak refuse to see that the camera markets have changed. Whereas its rival, Kodak's rival, Canon, it diversified into related areas like office equipment, like printers, copiers. They have made a timely razor blade. No, that is a different razor blade. That is a different what do you call? That is a razor blade. It may not work every time. Okay, like you give shaving equipment and then tie up with like or yeah, trimmers and shavers have come up. So that is what I'm saying. See, markets are not static, and those who refuse to see the changes, they will die. So here, that's why decision making means, like for example, there are a lot of stories in business where people, when they fail to see the or fail to innovate, they died. One of them is even Xerox, Xerox company, copier, Yahoo, yeah. So if you take Xerox company, they are the people who invented mouse, computer mouse, but they refuse to see that it has a lot of potential. Only Steve Jobs, when he happened to visit Palo Alto, what do you call Palo Alto, what do you call Park Research Center. There he found that these people have not exploited, even though they invented that interactive one, same thing. So there are so many problems, so many examples where if you are not taking the decisions at the right time, then you end up a failure. So it is both. So management is nothing but a combination of both art and science of decision making and leadership. So, but some of you may be getting like, what is the difference between science and art? So, how we define science means science is the one which art is implementation of science. I doubt it is not just and gaining experience. Right. So, if if you want to have a definition of science, you can get that definition of science from the quote of um, Lord Kelvin. Lord Kelvin. Lord Kelvin, he once gave a very beautiful definition for science. He says, science is nothing but it will try to quantify things. To tell you differently, to narrate in a different fashion, the progress of science is nothing but progress of measurement. The more you become sophisticated in measuring certain things, then the more your ability to understand things. Are you able to measure what you are seeing in quantitative form? So that's why what Lord Kelvin said now, regard to defining science, he said like, if you are trying to, if you say to the other guy, if you are describing a certain scientific phenomena in terms of numbers, in terms of qualitative words, Like for example, if you are trying to describe a phenomena like temperature in terms of qualitative words, like your body temperature is a bit high, low, then what that person, whatever that person is talking about, he is not sure about what he is talking about. And there is a bit of subjectiveness is there. But the moment if the same person describes a phenomena like temperature in terms of exact numbers, like this guy is having a 101 degrees Fahrenheit temperature, or this man has a normal temperature of 98.4. Like that means the moment you are able to express the given phenomena in exact numbers, that means you have reached a stage of science in that particular aspect. So that means in science, we expect everything to be in a measurable form, that too in a objective way. See, conventionally, what we do if we don't have a thermometer in our home, what we do is we use our hands to guess the temperature of the person who is suffering, supposed to be suffering from temperature, fever. But the moment you have a thermometer, then you put the you now you put a thermometer in his mouth. You know exactly it is whether it is 101 or 102. But once you know that this is the temperature, in fact, like now you have in every house there are some through experience they have become doctors themselves. Oh, if it is 102, put one paracetamol. Dolo 600. Some like people they have now doing a lot of self medication now. So that's why even in management, what we do is we try to measure whatever we are trying to manage. Just like temperature. So once you got an absolute way to measure temperature, our ability to control a phenomenon like fever in a body has increased. Like that's why there is an old adage in management. What that adage says is, yes, like quantifying has increased the quality of information. So once you are able to measure, you can manage. So that's why there is a old adage in management. To measure is to manage. You measure. So that's why even in management also, people have come up with a lot of quantitative tools to manage various things. So yesterday I was telling, like you have to manage 4Ms or 5Ms. That is what I say, uh, men, material, money, machines. All right. So means the procedures or process. So for everything, there is a measurement. Like money, you measure in terms of like how much profit, how much sales is coming, what is the ROI, return on investment. If it is materials, how much average on what is the average amount of material that you are consuming to generate, say, 1 kg of sugar or 1 ton of sugar. How much raw material like sugar cane you use to generate 1 ton of sugar. You know, people are able to, the moment they are able to measure certain things, their ability to manage things increases. So fundamental to science is measurement. So when we are, so what in as part of this particular subject in management science and productivity, we are going to learn certain quantitative tools like how to measure productivity, how to measure production, how to measure quality, how to measure time in a project management, how to measure how much inventory we are carrying in a particular period of time, right? All this, see, our tendency is now to generate data, quantify things. See, why IoT has become so popular? IoT, Internet of Things, industrial IoT. People are saying like IIoT. So where, see, now data has become cost engineer. Yes, cost. Actually, there is no cost engineer. So there is no cost engineer, but see, like using IoT, what is happening is the ability to collect information has increased a lot. Like, for example, if you take supply chain management, managing a supply chain has become much easier the moment people started using RFID tags. See, that's why Amazon fellow is able to give you the customer a power to track his own product. When he has ordered and how is it? So in a supply chain, RFID tag has brought in lot of transparency in the entire supply chain. People can track their product at what stage, in which warehouse or in which vehicle the product is going. So that is all part of your measurement to track things. And people are now able to build a lot of what you call machine learning, deep learning based on that. So in fact, Google is doing a fantastic job there. It is like using machine learning and deep learning, it is able to even predict your question. It will not allow you to complete your question. It will say like, are you looking for this question? Google is excellent in giving answers, but at the same time, it is also excellent in even in your predicting your question itself. That is all because of judiciously using the data that already various users have asked various kinds of questions. It is trying to consolidate that questions and trying to predict your question itself. So that is why management science means it is trying to bring in wherever it is possible to measure whatever you do. And data has become now the gold. It is not gold. Data has become gold. And in fact, that is the reason Google has ultimately made appearing to be giving everything free, but actually the ultimate product of Google is yourself. Customer is the product. It will try to track your browsing habits, your tastes. It will track you like where you are going, which hotel you are visiting, which city you are using, for what purpose. And ultimately, it will share, even though it says we are protecting your privacy, but no. Once you are on the internet, either directly or indirectly, it will share every information with the prospective marketers who are looking for your kind of person, so that they can direct their marketing efforts towards you. So ultimately, so that is where, like recently, Google has purchased one a company called um, Nest. A company called Nest. It is an IoT device which it is a company. Nest has made like Nest was founded by one of the a very serial entrepreneur by name Tony Fadell. Tony Fadell has started this Nest company, and their first product is to uh, monitor the usage of. It will try to monitor the usage of AC in your house. So people thought he bought it that company for $1 billion. So people were wondering what is there in a thermocouple device. So thermocouple device, you see, actually Nest is a simple thermocouple device, right? But thermocouple, but what is so great about Nest is it starts learning your usage pattern. Like when you are likely to switch on your AC, what is the ambient temperature during that time, and it will slowly learn your usage pattern, and ultimately once you give the control to you, it will automatically switch on the AC. Like suppose you are starting say daily at around 7 o'clock from the office, it will switch on the AC of your house maybe at 10 to 10 minutes before you arrive at your home, and it is able to, and as soon as the user enters the house, he has a very convenient environment. That it is not only that, like now Google is collecting all that information and trying to share with the most of the electrical utility companies, saying that, see, you have this kind of customers, you can appropriately charge the customers as per their usage pattern. You can milk them by appropriately designing your products. Like because in America, what is happening is they charge the customer based on the time of usage. So at night times, it is half the price of the daytime electricity charges. So in fact, like in America, what they do now, they are buying automatic washing machines. They switch on their automatic washing machines only in the night time, so that by morning everything will be so. It is also based on, even in India, it is also based on units only, but we don't have that time dependent consumption. We used to have the time dependent charges in the telephone sector. Like around 20 years back, if you make nighttime calls, it is one fourth of the daytime charges. But in US, uh, they have brought that concept telephone charges to electricity consumption. So what is happening? See, even in India, I think in 4 or 5 years, you are going to again get the same scenario here, like where your electricity consumption is not going to be at the same rate. So nighttime charges will be different from daytime charges, so that they can do load balancing. Like you have to do the load balancing in electricity generation. With respect to internet, that I don't know. Anyway, so here, what I mean to say is, in management, the more the data you have with you, the better is your capacity to take informed decisions, and thereby you can lead the people as per that, right? But anyway, so I think uh, Um, yes, yes, yes. Lot of devices, just like for AC, Nest is there, no? Like now people are using left and right, even electricity meters, like IoT devices are becoming popular. So, uh, in fact, like a lot of applications, lot of products are coming based on IoT. Like, um, see, like monitoring the water consumption in the hostels. One can make a Raspberry Pi or Arduino card. Based on that, you can monitor the consumption rate and accordingly switch on or switch off your motors so that you don't end up having dry tank. Okay, so that even water management, this supply chain management, like it's the IoT device is going to be make wonders and make even if you take even public distribution system, rise like where government gives lot of fixtures. Yes, 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 yes. Amarnath, yes, correct. So Nest is a like the Nest founder, Tony Fedor. He is a great guy. So it is from that only people got ideas for managing different equipment. In fact, like now the same thing is happening. Like people are talking about now, like where GE engines and Rolls Royce engines on aircraft, they are they are they, they send so much data about the working of the engine when they fly. They directly send to the headquarters, and the amount of data they generate is equivalent to 1 gigabyte per hour. That means it will send directly to the company, like at what RPM the turbine is working and what is the fuel air fuel ratio consumption, how much thrust the engine is developing. In fact, like people are joking saying that before the pilot knows that there is a trouble with his plane's engine, it seems the company people already know about it and take appropriate preventive measures to correct the situation once the plane lands. So IoT is now coming everywhere, and it is going to improve the reliability of the systems that we are managing. So that's why measurement is a fundamental thing. So that's why that old age has come. To measure is to manage, right? So we have to increase our capacity to measure whatever we are managing, right? So that is the gist of it. So tomorrow we will talk about the various what we mean by productivity, why it is important, right? We will continue our lecture tomorrow at 10 to 11. Okay. So is there any last minute queries you want to ask? Uh-huh. Why do competitors open side by shops side by side? Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. See, that is again a actually that will increase. See, it is a kind of win-win strategy. Again, why? Uh, because this normally happens when you have a slightly different set of customers. Each of you might be targeting a different kind of customers, but you want to make a cluster out of it, right? Say, for example, in doctors' case, this happens particularly. Like most of the doctors open in a particular street of a city, particularly in India. A gynecologist, what do you call, a cardiologist, eye specialist, most of them will be clustered around the same place, because the chances that a person having multiple ailments can come to a particular place and get most of the things solved in one go. Yeah, like see, it may be like sometimes you want a second opinion. You need not go far off place. Like in fact, customers are never satisfied with one opinion, so they want a second opinion. So that is, and actually why this is a very good marketing strategy as tune prices. Yes, yes, yeah, that may be one reason, and most of the time, because it is just like malls. Why malls are becoming popular, or why supermarkets are becoming popular is, once you go there, you can get everything. See, malls, like in malls, you can go to movie, you can have something in restaurant, and then you can purchase Levi pant, or so it is not actually really eating into one. You see, sometimes, you know, people, the chances of people coming to a cluster of showrooms is more than exclusively going to a particular showroom. And people always like variety. So if one shop doesn't show up that variety, the other fellow, the chances of that fellow going to neighboring shop is, yes. So the chance of going into neighboring shop is very good. So that clustering, see, it is all based on experience only. If it doesn't work now, people will automatically shift their shop. But what their most of the experience is, yes, even like they may be lured by other people. So it is not that like most of the fruit shops, they are clustered at the same place, because even for the people to come to a market where multiple vendors are there, there is also like it is going to, when you cluster together, you have what is so called, like you attract more customers, because people normally they don't like to go to only one exclusive shop. When they go for shopping, they want some kind of options, exit options, and that is provided if most of the shops are kept at the same place. So that is the reason, like people tend to cluster together, right? So shall we exit? I think we will again meet tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I thought like your class is on Thursday 8 to 9, but based on the information I got it, I think I will have to change it. Okay? Wow. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for your patient listening.